Day 15, halfway through MOvember, and for this video I'm going to pull from the work of Pete Walker. Pete is a developmental trauma specialist and has written 3 books, an autobiography, but the 2 I've featured here are Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving and The Tao Fully Feeling, Harvesting Forgiveness Out of Blame. Both are incredible books to read, painful to read because Pete really captures what it's like to live through developmental trauma and have to get well from it. But tonight's tool comes from the Surviving to Thriving book, and it is available on his website as a PDF, 13 Tips of Managing Flashbacks, for free. So pete_walker.com. And there's some wonderful tools I might pull from throughout this MOvember campaign. So the first tips, and I suppose one thing, I have done videos in the past where I've talked about this being useful for anybody that has trauma flashbacks. So if you're suffering from betrayal trauma due to sex addiction or developmental trauma due to childhood, then these tools could be useful to both parties. Again, they were written for developmental trauma though. So the first one is, say to yourself, I'm having a flashback. And Pete expands this to, flashbacks take us to the timeless part of the psyche that feels helpless, hopeless, and surrounded by danger as we were in childhood. The feelings and sensations you were experiencing are past memories that cannot hurt you now. So the beginning of this is a radical acceptance into, instead of pulling away an anxiety of, oh my gosh, I'm falling into a flashback, what happens here is it's saying, no, let's pull and sort of push into this and radically accept, I'm having a flashback, but I'm far from that danger in the past now. The second one's very similar in the sense that remind yourself that I feel afraid, but I'm not in danger. And Pete expands that to, remember you are now in the safety of the present, far from the danger of the past. He's basically saying I am safe now here in the present. And so again, it is, feelings aren't facts, but it's a fact I'm feeling it. So I need to sort of recognize that, look, I'm feeling afraid, but I'm not in danger. In saying that, it's not uncommon for folks in recovery to have to make sure that they aren't in danger. So number 3 is, own your right and need to have boundaries. Remind yourself that you do not have to allow anyone to mistreat you. You are free to leave dangerous situations or protest unfair behavior. So sometimes we do find ourselves for a while in recovery, and sometimes flashing back to and going back to moments where we've got damaged boundaries and we do find ourselves in danger. So if number 2 doesn't apply, number 3 might, and that we need to exercise our right or need to get ourselves into a safe place. The next tip Pete's got is to speak reassuringly to your inner child, or if you're a betrayed spouse doing this, that inner self. So speak reassuringly. Pete here says about developmental trauma, the child needs to know that you love her unconditionally and that she can come to you for comfort and protection when she feels lost or scared. So this is part of that inner dialogue that as you start doing childhood trauma work, having that narrative with that inner child where you can it helps to identify the needs and reassure and speak calmly. If you're a betrayed spouse, this could also be a place where you are speaking to that part of you that's been really injured and letting her know, I've got your back, I will do what we need to do to make sure that we're safe and looking after ourselves. And so this inner dialogue that we move again towards instead of trying to disassociate away from. The next one we have here is deconstruct eternity thinking. In childhood, fear and abandonment feel endless. A safer future was unimaginable. Remember, the flashback will pass as it has many times before. And I would say with betrayal trauma, what we deconstruct here is that limbic feeling of being in danger and wanting to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and just having to deconstruct the eternity thinking that moment you're in is going to be all pervasive and forever, and just to bring it back to this moment that we're in. The next one is about remind yourself that you are in an adult body. And again, with allies, skills, and resources to protect you that you never had as a child. And Pete makes the point that feeling small and little is a sure sign that you're in a flashback. So if we're feeling that smallness and littleness, and we might feel that we're really cut off from any access to support, and that idea that remind yourself that I'm surrounded by allies and resources. I've got access to support. In betrayal trauma, I would be saying here that I can access in this adult body safety, support, information, and guidance to help me. I'm not alone anymore. Now, the next one really brings back into play 4 main areas. So Pete's saying, well, then we've got to ease back into our body, because when we have a trauma flashback reaction, we can sometimes even disassociate completely and leave our body. So easing back into our body has 4 components. Oops, I've gone one too far, so I'll try and go back one. The first one is gently ask your body to relax. So this is where we might even do that affectionate breathing from mindful self-compassion, or affectionate body scan. So it's feel each of your major muscle groups and softly encourage them to relax. Tightened musculature sends unnecessary danger signals to the brain. So if you have trouble doing that just on your own recognizance, there's some wonderful meditations by Christopher Germer, Kristen Neff from the Mindful Self-Compassion about affectionate breathing and affectionate body scans, and the Calm app has got really good body scan meditations to do too. Part B is, Part B is breathe deeply and slowly. Holding your breath signals danger to the brain. So if we can start to just breathe deeply, diaphragmically, sometimes even hold your hand on your diaphragm. I know it, but South Pacific come up with butterfly hands, which is from the work of Pete Levine. So this idea of just bracing yourself, breathing deeply, slowly, and it's sending a different message to the brain that we're not in danger, that we're sort of doing okay. We're not in a panic state. We're going to have this rushed breathing or held breathing. The next one that we have here is slow down. Rushing presses the psyche's panic button. So if we can, with that breathing, slow everything down. And then the last one is find a safe place to unwind and soothe yourself. Wrap yourself in a blanket, hold a stuffed animal, lie down in a closet or a bath, take a nap. Find that place that's safe for you. It's very different for each person. And if you can just get grounded again in those places of safety that you've identified, it's going to reset that traumatized brain that's dropped into this limbic reaction. So the next one, resist the inner critic's drasticizing and catastrophizing. So Pete here says, A, use thought stopping to halt the endless exaggeration of danger and constant planning to control the uncontrollable. Refuse to shame or hate or abandon yourself. Channel the anger of self-attack into saying no to unfair self-criticism. And B, use thought substitution to replace negative thinking with a memorized list of your qualities and accomplishments. Now, I know that in working on affirmations and lists of accomplishments and qualities, sometimes that's really hard to do when you've got a very powerful inner critic. So that's something that you can also do in therapy to help you to get that list. You might need some support for that. Number 9, allow yourself to grieve. Flashbacks are opportunities to release old unexpressed feelings of fear, hurt, and abandonment, and to validate and then soothe the child's past experience of helplessness and hopelessness. Healthy grieving can turn our tears into self-compassion and our anger into self-protection. Number 10, cultivate safe relationships and seek support. Take time alone when you need it, but don't let shame isolate you. Feeling shame doesn't mean that you are shameful. Educate your intimates about flashbacks and ask them to help you talk and feel your way through them. And this can go with any traumatized person. We really need to not let our shame get in between us and the support we need. Pete does talk about when we've been chronically abused as children, how difficult this might be to seek these relationships, and we might need to start with a pet. We might need to start with online sort of connections. It could be just too dangerous to reach out for support, but where possible, cultivate safe relationships and seek support. You deserve it. Number 11, learn to identify the types of triggers that lead to flashbacks. Avoid unsafe people, places, activities, and triggering mental processes. Practice preventative maintenance with these steps when triggering situations are unavoidable. So it's just, there'll be times where we can't avoid these triggering places, but if we can learn how to avoid this, we can at least prepare. And again, with our intimates and support and the stuff that we've cultivated, the people we've cultivated can be enormously helpful to helping us deal when we're triggered. The next one, figure out what you're flashing back to. Flashbacks are opportunities to discover, validate, and heal our wounds from past abuse and abandonment. They also point to our still unmet developmental needs that can provide motivation to get them met. So if you're in any form of process, any form of journaling, any form of therapeutic process, this is a chance to go, let's unpack this and find out what this is. So when I'm reassuring that inner child and relaxing myself, I know exactly what I'm trying to avoid here and help myself heal from. Number 13, be patient with the slow recovery process. Pete writes, it takes time in the present to become unadrenalized and considerable time in the future to gradually decrease the intensity, duration, and frequency of flashbacks. Real recovery is a gradually progressive process, often 2 steps forward and 1 step back, not an attained salvation fantasy. Don't beat yourself up for having a flashback. I know for a lot of folks, and especially in this day and age where there's so many great ways of dealing with trauma, somatic as well as CBT sort of techniques that help with trauma. But the fact of the matter is it can take time. And I think sometimes we promote this salvation fantasy. I'm going to find this right person, this right technique, and everything's going to be resolved straight away. And if that's not your experience, if that is your experience, awesome, fantastic. But I work with a lot of people that's simply not their experience. It takes time. As Pete says here, recovery, real recovery is a gradually progressive process. So if that's your experience, you're on track. And if you can be around others and be in community with others, I know for myself, just having honest, earnest relationships that I've cultivated, real support is irreplaceable. So when I'm in those moments, I don't let shame isolate me, and I really would support you to help find those supportive networks for yourself. Start with a good trauma-focused therapist, but ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, Codependents Anonymous, some Church Connect groups that might be more trauma-focused. Please look in your community and keep looking until you find it. I can't recommend more highly Pete's website and his books that I've got on the beginning of this video. So that's enough for tonight. Be gentle with your heart. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as I do the next video. Bye.